Welcome back to Bunters Yard. Today we are weathering a complete railroad train pack, which comprises this shunter 08513, which I was informed was built in 1958, and it's in the Rail Express Systems livery, which is sort of mid-80s I think. And coming in the set are these two railroad type coal wagons, and it's not too bad vent van. One of the newer ones, they seem to change the van. I've seen sets with the great ones in. Now the sets are not particularly bad value for money. They on eBay you might get them to a £40, that sort of mark, which isn't bad value really if you think about it, because you're going to get a shunter which is worth that on its own, although it's just a railroad version. So, but they're not too bad. So the first thing we're going to do is, these are just quick makeovers on these. So the first thing that we're going to do is just to add a bit of grime into the nooks and crannies. As you know, you've watched this before, kind of working in a similar way. This is just my MO, as they say, as all the good American police series would say. My particular way that I do things. So we've sprayed it with Vallejo Air, and this is a colour called Brown Violet, which is a new, I'm not sure it's called violet at all, but Brown Violet. I'll put the link down in the description. It's a new colour I'm trying out. I'm just trying some different colours of dirt to see which one I like. This one don't look too bad actually. So I've sprayed it on, and before it's got a chance to dry, I'm still going to rub it all off again. And the idea is that it leaves some of the paint in the nooks and crannies and crevices, and just makes the whole shunter look a bit unloved and unkempt. Is that the word? So not going to go too heavy. I don't want to completely blisterate the colour of the loco, but it is going to come off before it gets a chance to dry. And if we do these sort of downward strokes, then that simulates the rain washing down over the loco, and just leaving the grime in under the hinges and in between the panels and so on, and some runs where the bolts and the rivets are. Now, if you listen to the music in the background, I'm not sure how loud it's going to be in the final mix, but we've got some groovy sort of Motown-y R&B stuff today. So because this is a slightly longer video, I've got 3 different tracks. If you do get to hear any of them, they're quite upbeat and funky, really, my type of thing. So just thought I'll leave those there for you, and I'll shut up at some point along the way, and you might be able to hear a bit of the music if you're into that sort of thing. So that's the 2 sides done, and then we're going to do the same around the front. Now the middle of the grille, I'm going to not hit all of that with this. I'm just really going to concentrate on the bottom. It's going to get some other colour a bit later on, but the bulk of it seems to end up down the bottom. It sort of washes down the grille. So if you look at the front of lots of these, the bottom will be sort of these dark browns and black sooty build up residues on this radiator. So that we're going to just sort of skirt around that for this one. And then on the back, little bits of detail on the back, and we just want to highlight those bars and the hangers where the lamp hangers would be. And then down on the buffer beam, there's a little bit of detail of the bolts and the rivets. And as we wipe across those, it'll just leave a streak, as if the rain has done half a job and washed some of the dirt away. So that's the front. Now I normally just wipe the buffers back, even with my thumb. I don't like too much sort dirt built up on those of this of any weathering we're doing. But if you just give it a brief wipe with your finger or a cloth or something really quickly, it'll just leave a bit of mark on there, and it'll build up its own little character. So using the same brown violet, we're just going to quickly apply across the top and just do the same to the top as we've done around the sides. We're going to wipe this back slightly more, and it just leaves again those ribs and those panel joins with a bit of dirt sort of in them. Depending on how heavily you want yours weathered, you may not even want to wipe it back. You might just want to blow straight across it and then just leave it basically. We're going to add some more anyway. So around the sides, these bits on the side of the engine cover, they're normally quite heavily soiled. So just going to put a little bit extra in there, and also around the edges of the cab. This is a Vallejo air paint, so it's already pre-thinned, so it comes straight out of the bottle into your airbrush and use it straight away. And we're on a relatively low power here. I think we're doing most things on about 15 psi today, so it's not going to sort of splatter out all over the place. So we've got a bit more control. So I'm going a little bit easier on the wheels and the coupling rods down the bottom there. It just saves a lot of cleaning later on, but you know, it depends. If you want it heavily soiled, then that's kind of the price you're going to have to pay, and take a little bit of time to clean up all the pickup areas. So back to the roof. Now we've got Vallejo Air Black in our brush, and I'm just going to highlight these ribs and these sort of fillery type cap. I'm not sure what that is, maybe for oil, I'm not sure. I'll have to check out one day what that actually is, but normally you see a bit of build up of soot and grease and oil up there, so that's what we're going to do. And turn the pressure on the airbrush down just a little bit more, to give me a little bit more control, so I can work closely with the airbrush, get a fine line, and say more control. So we're going to use this black just to simulate some exhaust soot on these grills. There's normally a little build up of oil and grease in there as well. I suppose where the soot, comes from the exhaust, and sort of as it's travelling forward, it's going to settle on that surface. Around the front, so just extra bit in the grill, in that radiator grill, just to make it a little bit more greasy. The pattern's never generally uniform, so it's higher on one side than the other. So that's how I've seen lots of them looking like that. So that was an idea. So and then these little vents on the front. Now when you're airbrushing at any pressure, whether it's high or low like this, when it's low, it tends to clog just a little bit more readily. That's what I find anyway. So every so often you'll see me take the airbrush out of the frame and I've got that blue cloth beside, and I'll just quickly give it a full sort of blast on there just to make sure that the nozzle is remaining clear. Don't tend to have to normally use any cleaner on it, so normally just point it away from your model and give it a bit of a blast, and that'll just keep it clear. So I'm just adding the black as like a soot element just around the edges, where it will tend to build up as it pushes through the air, and then down on the coupling rods, they're normally grease. Now I think on the Rail Express systems locos they should be red, but I didn't want to take too much time on this particular one and paint them in red. So I've just left them in yellow for now, but I think ideally they should be red. And I like to just rub it over my finger, and that just kind of gives a look as if it's been sort of half-heartedly cleaned with a cloth. So on these railroad models, some of the handrails are not completely filled in, but it doesn't take a second to do this. So this is just a vallejo colour, but you can use any white acrylic. I'm using the side of the brush and going over fairly flatly over the rails that I want to colour in. Now the bigger rails, I have bigger handrail at the top is already done. Just want to put in those sort of steps and handrails on the side. There's only a couple to do, but it just makes a little bit of a difference, not essential. And then finally, just to just sort of make it more uniform and merge the different colours that we've got on there. This is just we're using the brown violet yet again, but very lightly, and this just creates the blend and the fade between the roof and the sides. Don't forget to do the coupling tension couplers. Always forget those, as you know. So on to the powders for this one, the weathering powders. Now the big area of powder you see in the end on the left there, that's just a mix of all the different colours that I use. Rather than tipping it away, I just kind of shush it to one side, mix it all together, and it gives me just another colour to use. You would have seen that I sometimes leave them spread out, and it sort of mix and match as I go. So this is Black Soot, which is again from Vallejo. Don't have much luck with black soot on its own. Never seems to bond particularly well, but I'm going to use this mixed in with the Humbrol Dark Earth to give me a variety of colours, so I can sort of darken it as I go if I feel the need. And not going to go too wild with this, just really around where the wheels are, so there'll be splashes of mud and sleepy grime will come up from the track. And then we'll mix some of the black in, gives a slightly darker shade. With the black I find it easier to just sort of dab it on. Hopefully it will it will stay. It doesn't adhere like the other powders for some reason or other. I need to try some different brands out to see if I can get one that works a little bit better for me. But just normally dab it on, and then as it gets fixed later on with the varnish, it will hopefully stay in place. So a little bit of black in the grill there. And then we'll do something similar on the other side. I just want to make those horizontal surfaces, those flat surfaces, where there's going to be lots of fallout of airborne sort of oils and greases and dirt. They'll settle on those surfaces, so I've just made them a little bit darker than some of the vertical surfaces. Try not to get too much powder near the any of the working parts, the moving parts, because it can clog, especially if you get your lacquer on it later on. It will set and it will foul up the mechanism. So just beware of anything around those the coupling rods especially. So that's that one done. Let's move on to our second one. I'll quickly show you the before and after, and then we'll crack on with part 2. This is the vent van that comes in the kit. As I say, I've seen this with the grey van as well, so I'm not sure if this is the original one, but it looks a bit newer than the rest. I'm not sure, because it's got different tension couplers on it, so and these newer style wheels. But anyway, it definitely has a van in there. So we are just painting a couple of the planks out. We'll do more around the other side. I won't show you them all. This is just to simulate them being replaced at some time when they've rotted away and been replaced, and they've not been painted, or the paint's come off, or whatever the scenario is. And we've got 2 colours in there, just a light brown and a very light grey. This is from AK, and they're quite a thin paint, so we use it straight out of the bottle. And I'm just going to paint, as I say, random slats as we go. And you can see there's a few more I've done there. And we use the same brown violet just to do the sleeper grime on the wheels and the chassis. And then just a little bit of splash up the side of the van, just to sort of blend it in with the chassis. And on the ends, now the ends are normally a bit dirtier than the rest, so we'll go a bit higher up with the dirt on the ends. Now on the roof we're using this is just a black again. I'm using it very, very lightly. Just going to pop it on and then wipe it off, and that just creates our smears. If you want to do a sort of heavier weathering, then you put it on thicker in streaks and then drag it with a brush perhaps. But this is kind of the look I'm going for in this one. And then with the black, I'm just going to just catch around the edges. See, we're at low pressure and we're quite close, so we've got a fine spray. And then just a touch along the tops, on the sides and the front of the back. I would normally use, on this particular one, I'd normally use a colour called Smoke, but again, which is another vallejo colour. It's kind of like a semi-opaque, it ends up like a wash, I guess. doesn't it? It's not thick paint, you can still see through it, but it gives a smoky effect, which is like a dark brown. And that's a good one to use. But because I'm doing the others, the vans in, they've got coal loads and so on, there's going to be lots of coal dust, so I thought this just kind of fitted in more. And I had the black in the brush for the vans anyway, so it seemed to make sense to use that. So back with the weathering powders, now we're adding some bright orange rust into the palette there. And we're going to first of all just do the chassis in our normal weathering powder. Not going to go too wild again. Just adding some of the orange rust into the mix there. Just give a bit of variety. And then if you use a smaller brush, if I can find the one that I want, we can be a bit more direct, and we can sort of target the areas where we want the rust to go. Then we can do this with oils. We've done that before if you've watched other videos. But see, we've got the powders, we'll just dot it in where we are targeting, and then with the soft brush we'll just do a downward stroke, and the orange will mark the paintwork, and you'll have a little smear. It's not going to be too pronounced, but it's subtle and it's going to be there. I've used this pencil before. I find it really easy to use, and this just gives the chalk mark sort of effect. These markings have no meaning to me at all. They just seem to be random things. I'm sure there are proper markings, and I'm yet to find a list of proper markings. So everyone knows, do pop a link down below for me. That'd be great. So here we go with the wagons. Now these wagons are both coal wagons. They're not marked colliery. This one isn't anyway, but it was a coal wagon, I believe. So using this brass or brush, I'll put the link down below. They come in a kit normally, and we're just using this to scratch away the paint, just to make it look a little bit distressed. Normally you could do this with a carbon fibre one or the glass fibre one that's included in the kit, but it seems to be quite thick, that paint, and I was struggling to get it off with the glass fibre brush, or fiberglass brush even. You could do this if you wanted with a sharp blade. You can have a scratch with the blade if you want, or sandpaper wet and dry, whatever you choose to use. Just be careful, because it will obviously mark the rest of it. This white paint is quite tough actually on these. We just want to make it look distressed. It's really no point in weathering your wagons to make them look 30 years old and abused if the livery is as pristine as the day it came out of the factory. So here's the colours we've used, again for the wood panels, the same as on the van. And they are they're as any paint would be that you're going to use straight from the bottle. It's already pre-thinned. It's not going to cover your planks in one go. So if you want to completely disguise the fact there was any writing there, make it look like a brand new panel, then you might need to use more than one coat, as you'll see when we get going. but it just gives a faded appearance to selected planks. Generally the planks at the top are going to be first to go. They're going to get a bit of abuse there when the loads hit them and so on. So we're going to make a few of the top panels look as if they've been replaced at some point. And I would definitely give that another coat to make that fade even more. So a nice fine brush, steady hand, take your time. But a lot of this again is going to be covered with grime and powders in a bit, so it's not too critical that you get right up to the edge. This is just a relatively quick makeover for this railroad kit. I just wanted to see how long it would take me to do this. About an hour and a half if you're interested, including all the filming. So I've got a couple of different colours in there, and you could obviously use different shades of, like on this one where the wagon is blue, they may have replaced the panels with wood and then painted them blue, and it's the wrong shade of blue, or it's too bright, or just completely the wrong colour, or red primer, whatever you think is right for you. There's no right way, to be honest. This is just to give the effect that it's kind of old and been around a little bit. Now you see me do both the wagons together. They're both the same. They're just different colours to be fair. So the techniques we use, they sort of they mix, from one to another. So we're just going to flick backwards and forwards. If there's maybe the same on one that I'm going to do that's not the same on the other, I'm not sure, but I've left them both in just to demonstrate that we're doing them in the same way. So you can see with the second pass of the colour, it makes a bit of difference. It's now just looks like a replacement panel on those. So on the chassis on both, we are going to use the same brown violet that we've used before. I'm not taking the wheels off. We don't see much of the wheels on these, but if we just give them a spin and airbrush them at the same time, they seem to get enough coverage to do the job. And on the backs, the same as on the van, we're just going to make it a little bit dirtier than the rest. Just make sure you get those buffers from all angles. And then the same on the blue one as well, exactly the same. Going to do along the sides, just see if we can hit a little bit just at that as it kicks up at the end when it gets to the end of the van. So the tops these are coal wagons, so it makes sense that these are going to be some sort of very dark colour. So we're using black, but we're not going to completely change the colour. We're not going to have it completely black. This is just to give the appearance of the coal dust having marked the sides of the panel. You just take your time with the black, because it's so easy for it to come out and just completely make everything go black. Just a nice low pressure on your airbrush, and several passes. You can see we're just dusting it and building up as we go. On the ends, we're not taking as much care because, as you know, they're going to be dirtier than the rest. Now the inside we're going to put in a coal load in a moment, so I'm not going to paint the whole of the inside. I'm just going to do around the edge on the bits that you're going to see once the coal load is in, and we're going to put some weathering powders in there as well, just to dirty it up a little bit. And we do the same on the blue one. side again. So weathering powders being a little bit more liberal on these are going to be a bit more weathered and tatty than the other two parts of the rake. So just brushing the powders in just to mainly blend in the chassis to the body. Otherwise it just looks like, you know, one part on top of another, but this kind of ties them in together. And then we'll use the small brush just to target a couple of small areas like the hinges and the tops of those suspension springs. Just dot a little bit on, and then with the bigger brush, the bigger soft brush, just run down, and that creates our rusty run. And then back with our white chalk pen. So they may have on the sides, sometimes they're going to have destination chalk markings, which are going to be either visible or crossed through where they're still being used, numbers and crosses and all sorts of things. And then varnish. We're going to seal it before we add our coal load in. You can see the inside. We've also added some weathering powders as well, just to give a bit of colour variety inside as well. So onto our coal load. Now we've done these before, but in our little jar there is just plain water, and we're adding in PVA. It's about 50-50-ish. The more water you put in, the longer it's going to take to dry basically, and the more PVA you put in, the thicker it's going to be, and it may not flow as well. But if we had some washing up liquid, just literally a drop or two, or maybe there's 3 there, that would just breaks down the surface tension of the water, so it makes it easier to flow through your load, whatever it is in your wagon. So in this case it's going to be simulated coal, and you need to mix this up really well. And I'm using a pipette because I'm going to use that in a moment to drop it into the coal load, but it does take quite a while to stir this up, And a kind of good test that I find is if you put the pet right at the bottom and try and use it, if it doesn't suck up sort of easily, then there's probably some lumps at the bottom of the mix that you can't see properly. So it's just a matter of going through this. Make sure it mixes up properly, otherwise you do end up with all sort of blobs and stuff on your coal load. So this is from Hatton's. It's the one part of the Constructor series, and this is I think the medium grade coal. I'm just going to put enough in just to create that hump in the middle. Just like you can see that hump just very slightly from the side if you look at it side on. Now, one thing it's advisable to do, is not essential, same as if you're ballasting your track, is that I would use, there's a little spritzer there, you can't see it in the picture unfortunately, but it's just a small sort of mister, and in there is water with, again, just a drop of washing up liquid. And you can use IPA as well, I believe, not that saying that I've tried, but I've seen other people use IPA. And then we'll just going to drop on some of our mix. Now it looks a bit odd at the moment because it's white, it will dry clear. Don't stress too much about that. But do make sure you get all around the edges. I've done this a couple of times before, but I've kind of been a bit forgetful, not done around the edges, and just with a lump of coal in the middle, nothing around the edge. It looks a bit weird, and you need to redo it again. So yeah, just make sure you go all around the edge. Same with the second one, doing exactly the same. Spritzer on that. That's it, just give it a little soak. I say that makes it easier for the PVA mix to permeate through the top layer of your coal. So that's it, we're pretty much done. So that's a whole set from the railroad set from Hornby. Hopefully there's something you've picked up along the way, something to use on your models. If you've liked this video, then do give it a like down the bottom. Add any comments, always lovely to hear from you. And if you're new here, do subscribe, and we'll see you again very soon.